Welcome back to What Are You Thinking, our podcast today. And we have incredible special guests, Mike Risley and the legendary Joe Warren. Mike's one of my friends of 20 years. He's a businessman. He has had massive success in his life, a well-accomplished national champion wrestler back in the day, and now he's a national champion businessman. Joe Warren, my goodness, 4 times world champion. Joe Warren, my goodness, you have fought your way in the arena and come out a mighty successful man. Anyway, thank you guys for being here today. This is really exciting to me. It just happened. You're here on business, here in New York City on big business, big stuff's about to go down. I want to talk, Mike, about this new enterprise. You're the chairman of the board of this Battleground Fighter Club. I don't even know exactly what you call it.
Well, we rebranded ourselves because we branched out to add several pillars to our company. It's now called Battle Interactive Networks, but our main focus is on a combat sports league that's very unique. It's a 3-man team event and also an individual event. And, we're going to do a lot of star building and bring in a lot of star power with Joe and several of our other partners. So very excited about it.
I saw Joe's name on there. Joe is beyond famous. I mean, he's a legend right now. I mean, more promotional MMA fights, right, than anyone in history. That's what it says.
Yeah, you tell me.
Okay. I know. I guess you were left out of the news, brother.
Right, yeah, you never know what you did until a few years later, so.
Well, you've certainly had your nose to the grind. You have been fighting. You have a legendary life story of wrestling and fighting, and what you've done has just been beyond human achievement. I can't even imagine what you've gone through, and I want to hear about it. So, Mike, thank you for bringing Joe here today, and you guys, what you're doing with Renzo Gracie, I understand, and other MMA fighters, and you got a mixed bag of martial arts here in the bag here. So both of you have a very similar past of being fighters, being wrestlers. Mike, you made it all the way to the national awards where you were the champion wrestler in college and high school, college, and then your collarbone broke. How did that happen?
That was in '84. Getting ready for Olympic trials, and unfortunately, I had a good ranking and
you were shoo-in for the Olympics, but then you broke your collarbone. Yeah. I mean, that wasn't in the playbook, was it?
No, not at all. I had fortunately been pretty injury-free most of my career. That was the first real serious injury, and as you know, that sidelines you for a while. But I was able to come back and win the U.S. Open, and I kind of decided it was time to hang it up, which at that time, I was the old guy. I think I was 27. And now wrestlers are wrestling, especially Greco, well into their mid-30s.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing.
It's like whole new supplements, vitamins.
American Greco-Roman wrestlers are usually older.
Yeah.
Before we medal. Our country doesn't wrestle Greco-Roman wrestling. It's a collegiate-based country, so everybody else in the world wrestles Greco-Roman, and we start like 20 years too late.
Right.
Wow. So, Mike, you went into business. You went into Wall Street. You were on the New York Stock Exchange floor. You were trading on the floor back in the crazy days.
Yes.
You did that. You went on to do other things like what I remember the most is the times you've told me about Caribbean cigars.
Yeah.
You were the CEO. You founded a cigar company that exploded.
Yes, it did.
Mike, how would you describe your entire journey? I mean, you were before I met you. I met you at a place called church.
Yeah.
Which is
which means different things to different people.
Right. And so you had the guts to walk into a church where you were living a crazy lifestyle.
Yes. So my days in New York City, I was a young single guy making way more money than anybody had any business making at that time.
I think if I remember correctly, the limos would pick you up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And I was after a night of partying and stuff.
Well, a lot of times we would be out so late that we belonged also to the downtown athletic club as well as the New York athletic club. And we had gear everywhere to go to work. So if it happened to be 4:30 and the club was closing or 5 o'clock, we would sometimes tell the driver, hey, just take us down here, get a steam, get a shower, pump some coffee into you and hit the floor and roll it. And 15 minutes after the close, we'd be at our favorite bar, Morgan Williams, across the street, and that's kind of how it went.
So you had a number of things, habits to break. And change.
Yes. And it was a lifestyle for the people that I ran with. A lot of my running buddies were ex-athletes, great college athletes. Everybody, it was a testosterone fest.
And you had confidence, and you guys got away with everything. And they treated you like gods at college, right? Especially you with the world champ wrestler, Joe. We're going to get to you momentarily, but Mike, let's just get right to it. You had an encounter with God that changed your life.
I did.
Put you on a new course.
I did, and I had always known God through my whole life, and I kind of blossomed out of a personal tragedy that had reoccurred a couple of times early in my life, and all I can tell people out there is never let your suffering go to waste.
Wow!
Because there's something in there, man, that will bring you out to the other side, but it's painful.
Yeah.
And fortunately, right at the right time, I met you. And I met Lynette, and things I started to get some traction. We have a very dear mutual friend, Doug Shealy, who was
great man.
Instrumental in getting me to run. But, I think if you believe and you have faith and you're walking forward, even though you're walking into the abyss because you have no idea if any of this stuff people are telling you is going to work for you.
I mean, when you grow up a certain way and you have a certain lifestyle and you're never introduced to what the real essence of knowing God and living in community with people who know God, love God, a lot of times you get this image that a pastor would have a burlap sack on and he just, with sandals and just walking around, long hair.
Yeah.
You have this image that they're weak.
Yeah.
And when you came into our church, you met Pastor Adam Burt. He played NHL hockey. I mean, he would fight for a living, played hockey on the side.
I spoke to him on the phone a few times.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah.
Mike's good buddy,
you met Adam. You met other football players from the Jets and the Giants, and you saw that it's real. I mean, everybody has their journey, and that's what people who are watching today. I want you to know that if you're on a journey right now, that's good. That's okay to be on a journey. We're all on a journey. We all have ups and downs, and when you begin to serve God, He doesn't really even change who you are in essence, like your personality, your DNA, but there's something deeper that does happen when someone becomes a new creation in Christ. They change, and you changed. You weren't the same dude.
Right. And I what I would say to people who are on the journey and searching, you have to be willing to do the work. You have to do the work. You have to sacrifice, and you have to stay focused, because if you don't, you'll keep going back to the same place you were, and you'll never move to that next pad.
Mike, your change was so dramatic. I mean, my sons were young when we first met. They were younger, and now they're grown and out of the house, married and paying their own bills. Thank God, right?
Right.
So they got that going. But I trusted you with my kids. I mean, you just became family to us, and your story, Mike, is written up in this book, Miracles in Manhattan, and it's a book you were included in. I mean, Darryl Strawberry, a famous legendary baseball player, wrote the foreword, and other athletes and doctors and business people, attorneys, hedge fund CEOs. It's crazy how Christianity spread the way it did, because it's based upon good news. It's not based upon living a moral life. That's the outgrowth of walking with God, of course, but it's the journey that God gives us as He creates a clean heart in us, and He changes us from the inside out. Joe, your nickname has been the baddest man on the planet.
It's a great one. You got to run with it.
You got. Everybody needs to know I'm talking to the baddest man on the planet today. I mean, this guy
changed to the baddest man. Mike Tyson has that trademarked. He told me. And he's kind of a mean dude. So when he said that's me, I'm like, I guess I'm the baddest man now. Okay, changed pretty fast one day. You don't want to fight Mike.
No, we're leaving Mike out of this room. That's for sure. I mean, Mike, you're welcome to come, but I'm going to have armed
Mike,
guards.
I love you. Okay, don't listen to anybody here.
That's great. I do have friends who are friends with Mike Tyson. I hear he's a great guy. What a great guy. Now, your story. You were from Michigan, You wrestled. You quickly became the best in the state, the best in the nation in high school. Then you went to college. And what happened there? You got some world championship stuff.
Yeah,
that happened.
I was always trying to win wrestling. I wasn't, my dad didn't like wrestling. He was like, I remember him grounding me, taking my bike and telling me, who's the dumbest guy on the block? And I said, I don't know, he's probably a wrestler. That's what my dad said. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I just, you're going to be something better than that, he'd say. And my mom's like, I dated wrestlers. They're great people. So like, they're like, if you can stay focused in class, we'll let you wrestle, So that was really kind of how it, my buddies all wrestled. Their dads wrestled in college, and I'd go to practice and just get my butt kicked by these guys. And for some reason, I liked it, and I had to work hard at some people are naturally talented and pull the trigger. I had to work hard to try to get the opportunity and the technique and the skill set to be able to win. So it was a lot of work, but then, you're a special person to be a wrestler. We work so hard for these little teeny medals, no money. It's a personal gratification thing. You learn how important it is and how strong your brain is to, if you talk yourself into things, how you can do anything you put your mind to. And I learned at a young age how strong my mind was. And if I could talk myself into it, I didn't need anyone else to tell me I could do it.
So the name of this podcast is What Are You Thinking?
Mm-hmm.
How important were thoughts in your journey to be such an excellent?
Well, I think mentally I was the strongest. Wasn't physically the biggest, but I just believed in myself, And I learned at a young age, probably from Coach Gable and the Iowa guys, that if you believed in yourself, you didn't need anything else, And that if you told yourself you were going to win, you can go get the job done. You don't need, So
that's how you were raised.
Yeah, and I just learned that. I mean, I was raised in a Catholic background. I didn't kind of swayed away from religion. I wasn't, I was too hyperactive for church, I think.
How important was wrestling in your life?
It was very important. Kept me focused, kept a dream in front of me, kept will. And I would fight towards these goals that I always wanted, try to keep achieving these goals, keep moving forward. And I think wrestling taught me that,
So you were a world champion more than once.
Yeah.
What is that like to have that kind of achievement?
It's satisfying, because as a kid growing up, you train so hard to win one little tournament. Mm-hmm. And then you think it might change your life. Everybody out there, you become a superstar because they tell you are, not because you change personally. You understand? So it's what the public says, oh, he's a superstar now, when you're the same person. So you feel like when you win these things, you should change. But then you notice you're the same person and that you were this champion for your whole life, and now you're just figuring it out.
How do you take that into the rest of your life? I mean, you're married.
Yes.
Joe Warren is married.
Happily married. I got 2 babies, or well, they're not babies. They're 14 and 13 now. So
yeah,
they were
teenagers.
Yeah. So I got.
Are they like you or like their mom?
They're smart, super smart. My daughter's just like me, and my son's. He just decided to wrestle this year in 8th grade. We've been trying to teach him to wrestle since he couldn't walk, and now he wants to. He's like 5th in the country in the chess nationals the last few years. Just really
kidding.
smart.
Wow.
And then, but he's
5th. Wait a second. Hold on. 5th in the country in chess.
Yeah, the chess nationals.
So he's brilliant.
He's just his brain works that way. And
now he's wrestling.
Well, he won like 4 matches. It was brand new. He's 5'10", 170 pounds.
By the way, 5'10" is taller than you.
Oh,
so
yeah. So he's a big old monster. And
14 years old.
Yeah. So he's just a big kid. He's a good kid. He just wasn't a serious athlete, but me and my wife were, so we knew he would probably.
So your wife is an athlete too?
Yeah, she was a gymnast, and yep. But so he started wrestling, and he's so smart. We'd be in the kitchen. And he'd say, Dad, what do I do now? And I'd show him. And the next day, he'd go pin a guy with it. And I'd send everyone to and he's like, I'm no good at this. I'm like, you're no good at this.
He has an unfair advantage, But this chess thing is what's so fascinating to me. It's like, I don't know you to be a chess master.
Well, I'm telling you, the chess and wrestling are very similar, I guess.
He's got the Warren DNA gene pool going for him.
Unfair advantage is what we would call it. But you've used that unfair advantage because some other people have the unfair advantage, but they don't make the most of it.
Yeah.
So how much of it, once again, of that is your thought world and your thought life?
Well, I live and die with the mindset. I talk to myself in a mirror. And
get out of here.
I talk to
I do the same
myself.
thing.
Yeah. It's the way that gets me out. Get out of the shower and I'll talk to myself. I'll be like, baddest man on the planet, and just start talking to myself until I start getting tingles. Then I smile and I try to go get the job done. But you can't lie to yourself. I can lie to anyone else, but you can't really lie to yourself. It took me a long time to be able to talk to myself in a mirror. I'd have to just kind of look in internal thoughts. You're thinking, but you can talk.
You know what, Joe? This is real because as a college student, when I met Jesus Christ, and it was that life-changing moment for me. Went on to do what I would call mirror talks.
I'm telling you, it helps.
So now, and I don't talk about this in public, but that began the process of changing the negative slate in my brain. It was all negative. It was all about how do I get ahead? How do I use people? A lot of fear. And it's interesting how the verses of scripture that I read got into my heart, and I started speaking them out of my mouth. Like, God has not given you a spirit of fear. No, I'm looking at myself
and
eyeball to eyeball in the mirror and talking to myself. Right. Fortunately, no one was in the, in the locker room. This was a private matter. But when I would tell myself who I am in Jesus Christ, you're more than a conqueror. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. No weapon formed against you will prosper. No evil will settle in your soul. You're the head, not the tail, the hammer, not the nail. These things would just flow out of my mouth to myself, and I was being transformed. I was interrupted by God. God found me. I didn't find him. I didn't know how to find God, but he found me. He came to me as I was reading the scripture, and then it just changed my life. So anyway, new trajectory and radical. But this is interesting. Keep going about your mirror talks.
Yeah, I just learned.
But did anyone teach you to do that?
Yeah, like Coach Gable and the Iowa guys, they taught me this as a young kid.
This is the legendary Coach Gable.
Yeah,
right?
they used to teach me if I believed in myself. And if I told myself I could do things, there's no reason I could do it. I didn't need someone else to physically do it. If I believed in myself, I could do anything. And they would teach me about mentally believing in myself, and I didn't need anything else. So they started talking to me about talking in the mirror, and they said, if you're going to be a killer, you got to embrace it.
And this is Coach Gable.
Well, this is Lincoln McElravy and the Brands and all the guys on his team. They were crazy, okay? Like, they're the best wrestling group in the world.
I'm going to give you a confession here, and I'll give everyone. I think wrestling is the greatest personal sport on the planet. I think it's just you. It's up to you. I mean, yes, you have a team.
You win individually to help your team.
Right.
You
do that. You contribute
we can't come out and help you.
But I don't really see it like as a team sport like basketball or football. You're out there to beat that opponent. And you want to drop one in the bag for the team, give them a point, right?
Right.
And wrestling really is your character's built in the practice room. Your character's built when you're on those long runs in the morning when it's freezing.
When you break yourself down.
Yeah, when there's nobody there and you're crying out.
How many stadium seats with two guys on your back? That's what I have in mind.
You got to embrace the grind and embrace the suck. That's the terminology when you're preparing to compete.
Yeah.
And that competition is like the pinnacle, and you put in so much pain and so much work and weight cut to get there. And then you get there when you achieve a goal in wrestling. For me, it was always like I got to the highest peak on the mountain that I was shooting for. And when I got there, I looked around and was fearful because I said, now I have to go do this again next year.
That's they call that the target on your back. Okay. And some people like me, I thrived with the target on my back. I liked being at the top. I wanted people trying to chase me. I needed that. Some people get scared there.
Yeah.
When they get to the top, they're not comfortable being a champion or being a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changes who you are when you start to win, and you tell yourself you can achieve these goals, and you go and get the job done. It changes who you are once you get to the top of the mountain or you become a world champ. I was taught to put those things on a shelf and move forward, try to go get more. You know, like you can do it. You can just sit there and dwell on a championship, and maybe cause trouble or do whatever, and just think you're the greatest. Or you can put it behind you and continue to move up that path. Once you achieve a goal, like I was a goal setter. Long-term, short-term goals. Mirror talks, things like that. I wanted to tell myself what I wanted to do, and I wanted to go get it for me. And then when you can achieve those things, it changes who you are. There's goal setters and there's goal achievers, and I'm a goal achiever. There's people that set goals every day, but then, if you understand long-term goals, this should be something you should never be able to reach.
Very good.
Maybe
your kids would reach those goals for you.
Yeah. And you know what? Why have a goal if you're not going to reach it? So I pushed hard and got those goals. And then once I got them, I was like, wait, I could do this again. And I just kept going and kept going.
And when we read your bio and all of these things that they talk about your life, and more. How did it go? More promotions.
I fought for more networks than any other fighter.
Yeah.
So like in the beginning of fighting, we would change every time I'd win. Like Bellator would go from ESPN Deportes to Fox to Spike. So we'd jump all over the place.
But they like tracking you around. I mean, I think a lot of that comes from your background. Okay, so you went from regular wrestling. I call it regular wrestling,
collegiate wrestling at Michigan,
and then
I joined the Olympic team in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center in Greco-Roman.
That's when you shifted to Greco-Roman. Yep. Was that a big shift, or was it?
Yeah, it was a huge shift.
Now this is a big question, because a lot of people might think of mixed martial artists, guys, maybe Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu might be the best thing to train them, or boxing, certainly wrestling. But how does Greco-Roman play in? Was that to your advantage?
Well, wrestling's probably the best sport you could use for mixed martial arts, because it's the foundation. Usually a wrestler ends up winning. You're going to end up on the ground on top of somebody, and we're real comfortable from there. But and now jiu-jitsu guys are comfortable on their back, so they play possum. So they'd be, I could take them down, but then I might get my arm broke. So it was terrible.
Okay,
I wasn't a fighter. Okay, it was scary stuff for me.
What Joe means by he wasn't a fighter, it's like he wasn't looking for fights.
No.
I mean, wasn't out there on the streets looking for fights.
But it's a different ball game, especially when Joe was coming up. We had a couple teammates that were pioneers, guys like Matt Lindland, Dan Henderson, Randy Couture.
Dan was your coach, right?
Yeah, Dan and Randy were on the Olympic team when I was coming up. So, and then I went and wrestled. I went and fought for Team Quest, Dan Henderson, and then Randy. They trained me, and I love those guys.
They're for people who don't know, these were the legendary leaders of the forefathers of UFC. The MMA and UFC.
First
right.
UFC champs.
So I won a world title in wrestling, and I was one of the only 4 Americans to ever do this. And
in Greco-Roman.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is that? Say that one more time.
I won a Greco-Roman World Championship, and so I was the 4th American to ever do that in history.
And we've only had one Olympic medalist in Greco-Roman since Joe won his gold. So that's what a drought it's been.
Yeah, I'm the last person to win 20 years ago. When
Team USA, come on now.
Right?
we had that discussion yesterday.
Okay, so you're gonna raise up the next generation.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Yeah, that's what Battleground.
Right? Yeah,
we'll get to that. But so you went to Greco-Roman. You won the World Championship. You were well known all around the world for your wrestling, Greco-Roman.
Yep.
And then you make the shift to the next level.
I remember I was snowboarding on the top of Snowmass above Aspen. Me and my brother, the state of Colorado let me get on any slope like an hour early because I won. They gave me like 2 Longhorn sheep tags. Yeah, so I remember giving those tags to Bill LaCure and his dad.
Yeah.
Oh no, Bill Zadok and his dad.
Yeah.
Because they were Bill won the world title the same day as me. We were friends.
And he was also an Iowa wrestler.
Yeah, he was one of the Iowa guys when I was coming up.
Wow.
And like Steve Frazier was my coach, and I'm jumping around, but I went to University of Michigan, and Steve Frazier was our first Olympic champ in Greco-Roman wrestling. He was the first guy to put a gold medal on my neck when I was like in 6th grade, told me I could do anything I wanted.
Wow.
And
he saw greatness, right?
He was in my corner when I won.
So I think this is really important for this video podcast, is that to see greatness in people is a skill, and to pull it out. And you had coaches who did that. And it sounds like your dad wasn't always on board for that.
No, but he loved wrestling. He's the biggest fan now. When he saw it that way, it was beneficial for me.
But that might have been your first person, that first coach to say, you can do this. I see greatness in you.
Yeah, my mom, she, I remember winning. I think I went to a tournament and I took third. There's 3 people, but I got this whole trophy. I was like, oh, this is great. So I remember I came home and I was telling my mom, I'm going to fill this whole wall with trophies. And
what'd she say?
She built me this little T. We drilled it into the wall and I put
You're kidding. She built it in faith.
Me and her built that thing while my dad was like, what, the wrestlers are stupid. Okay. And she's like, fill it up.
Okay. So what your dad said though, now let's analyze that for a second.
Back then wrestlers were stupid. Yeah. Okay. Well, they weren't the smartest kids in class. Now
okay,
they're valedictorians.
So the guys who I worked with, like in my days at UNC Chapel Hill, many of them were national champs.
Yeah. Colot.
And they were by far not stupid.
No.
I mean, but there's a chip. There's something mentally that blocks out achievement, and the workouts that the wrestlers do. It's not like we're going to work out for an hour and then go to get a Starbucks. It is like, it's with you the whole time. And running those stadium steps with people on your back.
Training for wrestling is a lifestyle. It's not a hobby. It's not a seasonal sport. When you're into wrestling and you're working to climb to that mountaintop, you live it. You don't.
Okay, so that's so good. It's so true, and that's inspiring for me to hear you say that, and it should be inspiring to all the young men and now it's women too. But it's inspiring to hear your stories and to know both of you. It takes a lot, but that chip, I wouldn't call it stupid, but I would say the chip will say that we're not paying any attention to pain or the cost of this or the agony of this or the defeats that you have or the broken bones or the broken joints. You've all had your share. One of my friends was in a wrestling tournament and he literally lost a testicle because of some weird move or something like that, and the pain that he went through, and then he got it fixed and he moved on. And that's why I deeply admire world-class wrestlers like you guys. I do.
Yeah, and it's it was kind of a rough road coming up in college. We had rough stuff going on. My roommate died in the sauna with me. And
he died in a sauna.
Well, we remember Jeff Reese back
cutting weight.
Yeah, Jeff Reese was from Elmira, New York. Actually, he was my roommate in college, and we were getting ready for for Michigan State, and back in the day we used to cut bad weight. It wasn't safe.
You'd had that. Okay, yeah. So that's
he died in the sauna with us cutting weight. So we had this whole kind of rundown. I really had to decide if I even liked wrestling anymore at that point.
Of course. That had to be traumatic.
It was traumatic for everyone.
So real quickly, for people who are watching and never heard that term, cutting weight, wrestlers have to have a certain weight. They can't just kind of keep eating the big whoppers and stuff. They literally have to get, you were what, 139 or something like that?
Yeah, I was at that point I was 118.
118.
And then when Jeff died, I was 134 that next day, so.
Yeah, so that was, you were just wondering.
It was a game changer for the whole country because it was one of those secrets that nobody talked about.
About what they did to lose weight. I saw my brother do that as a wrestler.
And so it changed the game.
Yeah.
I wasn't super happy because it happened a few weeks before that, Jeff, with a guy from Wisconsin, a Division II school, and no one cared, but then when it happened at University of Michigan, it was a big deal.
All of a sudden.
Yeah,
right.
And so, but it changed everything. And we went to a certification at weigh-ins where people had to be hydrated. It kind of saved the sport a little bit. It was kind of getting really rough, So after that, we just all moved forward. I had to rethink about why I was doing this, and it kind of brought everything back to me making a choice. And after that, I, kept pushing, decided I was going to wrestle after college, and decided I wanted to be a world champ, and something that people don't usually do. It's probably a really stupid idea that, we always try to do things that you probably shouldn't be able to do. I don't know why I always pick those things, but, that happened, and we achieved those goals. And then, fighting, I never really fought. I was telling you, I was snowboarding, and I got a call from Randy. and Dan, and they're like, we got you a fight. I'm like, what? I was like, I don't fight. And they're like, you just had a baby, right? I'm like, yeah. Like, you have to make money now.
And I said, that's how it happened.
Yeah, and I said, what do you mean? And he's like, that kid needs to eat. And I'm like,
necessity is the mother of invention.
And
right?
so I'm like, I don't fight anybody. I'm like talking on the phone. I'm on top of the mountain. They're like, listen, you're going to get on a plane in the bottom of this mountain. And
they just flat out told you what to do.
They said, get on this plane. You're going to fly to Vegas. We're going to have a practice. Go straight to Japan. And I'm
You've
like,
got to be kidding.
So I'm like,
so you didn't have any time. I mean,
I never fought
now wrestling, and then you get into fighting where, okay, they're hitting your face.
Yeah, I never really did that. I never punched people. I was a wrestler.
Right,
not a fighter.
So you had the foundation, of course, but then to go in and learn boxing, did you have to learn boxing?
Yeah, I mean, I jumped in, they threw me in the deep end with, lead boots on. I fought, they wanted me to lose. Okay, I was the American world champ that wanted to be beat overseas. It was called Pride Championships.
Pride Championship in Japan.
Yeah. So
okay.
It was the biggest promotion at the time. It was bigger than the UFC.
I actually remember that.
Yeah.
I remember
that.
So
by the time I got to Japan, it changed to Dream because the UFC bought Pride and changed it to Dream while I was on my way over there. And they wanted me, they had the #1 fighter pound for pound in the world in Japan. His name was Kid Yamamoto. And he wanted to beat American world champ.
You were the guinea pig,
Yeah,
huh?
so they're like, let's kick this guy's butt,
Right.
And I'm like, I remember I won a world title for like 60 grand or something, and they were offering me 30 grand, and for one match. And I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. I'll go do it. He made 1.2 million. Okay. And I beat him, but it was scary stuff. It's about the realest thing.
You beat him though. That was your first fight?
Well, my first fight, I fought the American champ. Okay. Chase Beebe. He was WEC champ. He was a world champ for in the US. I fought him first. And I had no idea what I was doing. My friend Damian Logan was my best friend, college roommate. He's with us and everything. He's been in every corner I've been in for wrestling and fighting.
Wow.
He's, my backbone, so, and he, I remember Dan and Randy, they've been in hundreds of fights. It was no problem for them. And they were like running around doing stuff. And I'm like, what? I have no idea what's happening right now. And he's like, do you know jiu-jitsu? I remember him reading his phone. I'm like, what's jiu-jitsu? He's like, this guy knows it. He did the last 5 or 8 fights he submitted guys. I'm like, what? And I remember Sim's grabbing the phone and like, don't take him down. I'm like, don't take him down? What do I do now? They didn't teach me how to punch yet. I never put a glove on yet. You understand? So they handed me my gloves and I just put the glove on. I didn't know you're supposed to wrap your hands.
But this is
in Japan, 120,000 people. It's my first fight I've ever been in. They push you out. There's fireworks and they're trying to slide me down a zip line to get, and I'm like,
oh, you're
going
kidding.
on? So I go to walk out and the guy grabs my hands. He's like, what? And then he goes and he hits me in where my cup should be. And I didn't wear a cup. I'd never wore a cup in my life. I'm like, oh, so I'm on the ground. And then they grab my hands and they're like, he didn't wrap his hands. Yeah. And they're like, what? And so they made me put the cup on of the guy coming out of the cage. Okay. And then they took my gloves off, took some wrap and wrapped around. And they're like, all right. And pushed me out. I'm like, what? I mean, it was a scary situation,
Sounds like it. Wow.
Yeah.
But
so fortunately,
that cup saved. So you now have kids. So thank God.
Cup saved them.
I had kids before,
So let me ask you something, because this is a question that a friend of mine wanted me to ask you. And he said, do you experience fear prior to a fight? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Oh man, my mind was so strong that we talked about, that it was trying as hard as it could to stop me from going out there and fighting. You got to understand, your brain's the largest muscle in your body, and it's there for one reason, to protect your body. So it puts doubt into your mind. It says, get away, you can't do this, what's wrong with you? I mean, I remember saying to people in the ring, I have 2 college degrees. Let me out of this freaking ring. And they're like, no. And I'm trying to get out. And they're holding my head. And they're like, you can't leave now. And I'm
slamming the cage on.
No, there's a ring. They're stopping me. I'm watching this 15-minute killing video of a guy coming out to fight me. I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. They're like, and I was like, I'm out of here. And they're like, you can't leave. I'm like, yo, I can do whatever I want. So I'm like trying to leave. And they're like, they just start screaming, make some money, like screaming in my face. And I'm like, make some money. And they're like, make some money. I'm like, yeah, make some money.
This is crazy story.
Oh, it's nuts. Okay?
Oh, man.
I remember
it's crazy.
Oh, it was, and then it got worse later because I would have to talk myself into fighting. I'd wake up in the morning and my legs wouldn't work. I was in bed. I couldn't get out of bed. My body would not let me get out of bed. I'd sometimes have a panic attack walking to the cage.
Now, this was a panic.
Pass out.
This was a panic attack.
Well, I don't.
You don't know?
I mean, yes, they were. Panic
so
attacks.
I don't get out of bed sometimes because I worked out the day before.
No, I was awake trying to get out of bed. My legs wouldn't work. Okay, like my brain was not letting my legs move because it didn't want to do what I was supposed to do. And I'd be getting ready to go out. I mean, I'm walking out and I'd pass out. And then they'd pick me up, be like, you okay? I'm like, what is wrong? They're like, go get him. And I'm like, go get him? Like, what does that mean? So, and a fight's about the realest thing you could ever do. I mean,
how did you overcome this fear? How did you put it behind you?
Well, at the time, it wasn't like, it was right then at that moment. They were trying to stop me. I had to mentally just turn the switch, become the baddest man on the planet, and go get the job done. And it was a turn to switch. People talk about that, but they say flip the switch. What that means is shut your brain off. Okay? Stop thinking and go react.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're thinking when you're competing, you're probably going to lose. Okay?
Well,
because you're not fast enough to be thinking and to reacting at the same time.
Yeah. We would call that in my world, we would say we're walking by faith and not by sight.
Yeah, crazy.
Where we have to overcome our five senses, and that's where faith kicks in.
And it's just, it wasn't easy, but that's what you deal with in wrestling a lot, is dealing with that fear and being able to put it behind you and push through that.
So let's ask you a question about MMA. How did that work for you as far as like for your whole life? I mean, here you are now, you're living a different life now that you've just left this world, but how did that affect you in your marriage, as a dad, as a citizen?
Well, I was always an athlete, so that's, my wife knew that when we were getting married. She's a stud, she doesn't.
She's a stud.
She doesn't mess around.
I think that's the first time I've heard someone just tell that their wife is a stud.
She doesn't mess around. She kind of expects me to win if I'm going to train this hard.
So when she sees you bloody and beat up, how did she handle that? Like, that's part of it?
Yeah, it's just part of it.
I walked in on my friend Adam Bird, the hockey player, our hockey player, mutual friend, and he had taken a puck to this side of the head, and his wife called me and said, I want you to come over and pray for him.
Yeah.
And I went in to see him, and first off, she was like, this is just normal. Come on in. And I walked in and I started crying because his head was like a pumpkin. I mean, the whole thing was just blown apart. He needed to have screws and plates put back in his head. Of course, you didn't have that. At least I don't think you had screws and plates.
No, but I've done that to people before.
Okay, what is pain like? And like, I can't even, like you said, I'm not a fighter. I'm definitely not a fighter. Okay, you are a fighter, but I'm definitely the kind of guy that would be like, if it's a sword fight, I'm gonna fake the sword sticking out. It's like, oh, they got me. You go take it. Take the battle. I'll be back here. I'll be praying for you guys.
Yeah, right.
So I go in there. I see Adam Bird, his head swollen, and I just got choked up. I didn't know how to handle this. But he was like, hey, everything. It's like normal. So how do you deal with pain? I mean, is that? And all the fighters have to deal with pain. Yep. But if there's one thing I've noticed about MMA fights, and I'm no expert on this, I've never seen, hardly ever have I seen someone showing pain.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of my coaches, Steve Frazier, my Olympic coach, used to teach me the best champion is the best actor.
Wow.
You have to be able to act like everything's fine all the time so that you can't let your opponent see your weakness. You know what I mean? And so that was something that happens a lot. Adrenaline, being in that fight at that point. I mean, it changes, you don't, it's really a fight or flight reflex at that point. You're going to bite down and you're going to win, or you're going to just get beat to death, and that's, that's the real truth about the sport. It's a very violent sport.
Yeah, and as far as fear goes, and Joe saying you have to be a good actor, I can remember pacing back and forth like a caged animal
Mm-hmm.
on the side, going out for a national title first time. And I had a grimace on my face, and I'm shaking my fist. I was terrified.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified.
Well, and
until somebody grabs you, and then the switch
wrestling,
goes off.
you can get out of bounds.
Right.
You understand? So you can get out of bounds, you can restart, take a deep breath.
In the cage,
he almost got me, And you get locked into a cage, and the only way you get out of there is if the other one's sleeping. You understand? So
Yes.
you get out of the cage by them bringing you out in a stretcher, or you walk out winning. So it's really, there's no winning by a few points or getting the job done. It's,
And you're going to the hospital after that.
One way or the other.
Everybody does.
I mean, I've been in ambulances with my opponent, and both of us are like, what's going on? I'm like, did I win? And
don't even know. So who was your greatest opponent? Who was your worst?
I mean, I fought, my first 8 guys were world champs. So everybody I fought was good. And I think my second fight, I fought the pound for pound best fighter in the world. His name was Kid Yamamoto from Japan. His dad was Olympic champ. Both of his sisters were Olympic champs. He was a state champion in Arizona. I mean, he was as good as they get. And back then they would have pound for pound fighters. So like, all the weight classes, this guy's the best in the world. He's never been beat.
But here's one thing about you is that you won a world championship in 2 different weight classes.
Yep.
I mean,
3 weights.
3?
Yeah.
How in the world, I mean, is that normal?
No.
Thanks, Mike.
There's only a small handful.
I kept losing them and had to go back and get them too. That was a problem.
I mean, Joe, look, you are extraordinary, and you had a lot to do with that. And obviously, God gave you gifts as well. This is it's not you're not a normal dude, and I feel really honored.
I feel pretty normal, so it's.
Yeah, right. Well, of course you do. But the rest of us who see you, it's like I could never do that or whatever. But that's not true. If somebody is called to that and they want to commit to that, they can do it.
Well, yeah, you could do anything like we talked about if you put your mind to it. You know, it's just sometimes not very peaceful and not nice. I mean, fighting is the realest thing you're ever do in your life. I mean, it's the scariest thing. I mean, it's, there's not really rules and things stop. It's a fight to the death kind of, and it's scary, so I had to learn to deal with that. It's not something I liked. I didn't like doing it. It was strictly a job to take care of my family. So I'd put a lot of the, like a lot of athletes don't like to put a lot of stress on, like, you have to win. I put it on like my kids aren't going to eat unless I break this dude in half.
Well, that's the story of Cinderella, the movie.
So,
I mean,
I remember that.
I mean,
movie.
what a great movie. I mean, that he fought for his family.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we all do.
True story.
I'm just saying we all kind of.
Man, that's a great way to. That's a new perspective. This is my job.
Everyone goes to work. They go to work every day. And that's our job. Our job.
Most people go to work every day.
Well, people try to. Yeah. But that was my job. I never thought anything of it. And so it's just as we this is a huge interview. I could do this. I could do this for hours with you. This is so fascinating to me, both of you. Your great stories and your comebacks and your ups and downs. All this, your mental fortitude. It's really truly remarkable. So in the Bible, wrestling is talked about. It's openly. So the Apostle Paul was no stranger to the sports in the cultures that he went through, where he began, and then he traveled the world, and he would talk about wrestling. And he said, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with principalities, powers, rulers, darkness. So this is where a lot of people live. They have their own ghosts and demons and things that they have to wrestle with and put behind. Have you had any internal challenges like that? Whether spiritual or in your soul or whatever? Yeah, I just, religion and spiritual stuff, I couldn't count on someone to help me. You understand? I hate to say it.
Why?
I would be in the shower, I'd pray to everybody. I was so scared. try to kill a goat, pray to Jesus, the
That's-
devil.
I think
mean,
that's-
everything I could do, I was asking anyone if they would help me to
Yeah.
please help me right now. I'm about to go get in a fight, and and I didn't want to do it. So I just, I guess my family and my backbone, my wife, things like that, that was kind of like my spiritual push. I was brought up Catholic, and we talked about, but I wasn't religious. I had kind of a fight with the whole religion a lot in my life. I had I couldn't understand why this person was there but didn't like me. Okay, like I was working so hard and doing everything I could. I was morally correct. I had a great family. I'm not a drug addict. And I just didn't understand why I was getting pushed through such hard trials back and forth. Kept winning, kept doing good things, and nothing really.
It's
So
interesting.
I have that hard, almost relationship with God.
Trial
I
by
have
fire.
a rough.
Well, that's really where I come from. I grew up without religion. I have a certain background, but I'd never read the Bible. I didn't know God. I didn't know Jesus. The only time I heard the name Jesus in my family growing up,
Yeah, when they were swearing at you.
when they stubbed their toe, when they stubbed their toe, and it was Jesus Christ, really. And it's like they never said stub their toe and said Beyonce or Aristotle or Buddha. It was always Jesus, and there's a reason. There's something about that name, and this is so. Christianity is not a religion, not supposed to be a religion. It's become a religion in certain sections, and it can be good or bad. And most of it is probably bad because it teaches you.
Faith is good, great.
Faith is great.
But sometimes religion takes the faith in a different direction.
Well, exactly. And so we all see that, and we all have observed that together. But for me, it's always been an ironclad relationship.
Yeah.
It's like I know Jesus.
Well, my whole family, everyone I'm around, my best friends.
Part of Joe's story is Joe is surrounded by people who love Jesus. His closest people, his real family, his
My
heart,
friends,
his
best
allies. So he's been protected.
They say he's
And
trying
sometimes,
to get me.
very, very similar to my story, I was always protected. I was protected by you and others. But you kind of fight it. You don't want to believe it. But you genuinely feel it in your heart. And I think Joe has experienced that because he's like, I got all these Jesus people around me. What's going on?
Yeah.
And I'm not a negative person.
we're
I don't
protectors.
look bad about this at all.
We're encouragers,
Yeah.
and we're his protectors.
Yeah. We talked about our wives. I mean, she's the rock behind everything.
Yeah.
She not a lot of sympathy. She knows how hard we do things and work, that if we're going to work this hard, she just expects me to go perform and win, and if you don't win, what's going on here? Like, I mean,
Boy, wow.
yeah. And
That's a lot of stress.
Well, no, it's just, that's kind of what I needed. I mean, she knew what
so
I was doing.
It was inspirational for you.
I mean, ever since the beginning, right when we started getting together right when I was graduating college.
Yeah.
So I switched to Greco. I never wrestled. So I was getting beat all the time. And she never saw me wrestle, but everyone says I was so great. And so one time we're at a tournament, she's like, maybe we should rethink your goals. And I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, who the hell are you? I'm like, get out of here. I've known you for a year. I've been wrestling my whole life, and she's like, but I just keep watching you cry and get beat. And I remember going into my coaches and saying, you better get somebody in here to teach me because my wife's going to leave me. Okay. Because she doesn't like a loser, and I'm like, and so at that point they taught me, and it was a change. I want to be look like that through my wife's eyes. Like, is that how she sees me? I pushed hard, so we gained a lot. We had a lot of crazy times and rough experiences, but we won, and together. I mean, I remember being, the night before one of my bigger fights, people didn't make a lot of money, guys my size back then. And I was fighting for like $200,000 a fight, which was crazy. Okay. And, I had to fight like the pound for pound, another best guy in the world, Patricio Pitbull, undefeated. And I weigh in and I order a pork chop. I remember it's like midnight. I woke up, I had food poisoning so bad. So
no.
It was coming out of everywhere. And it was hours in the bathroom. I was out, and my wife calls a wheelchair. And so she puts me in a wheelchair and rolls me over to the fight. And I'm like, honey, I can't do this. And she's like, dude, you're going to kill me if I don't get you over here. So I'm passed out, and they're like, Joe, you're up in a fit. And I'm like, I can't even wake up. And my phone's like like dinging on the ground, and they pick it up, and my wife's like, "Warriors don't eat," you know, like, and I'm like. I'm like, what? You know, so I wake up, I'm like, I better, you know, this is wartime, you know, turn the switch and try to get that thing down. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of backbone you need to try to get through that stuff.
And he won the fight.
Yeah, I won the fight, but it was just
kidding.
It was just craziness, you know. It just and it's just.
Where was this?
This was it was outdoors somewhere, Kentucky maybe.
Yeah,
Louisville or something.
Yeah, Louisville.
But it was crazy. It was, you know, and those things we've kind of grown together, me and my wife. You know, we've been on this journey together. You know, and so it's been ups and downs, but I mean, we're still rocking and rolling.
So you know, here's something that also we should think about really and talk about. What are you thinking? Because we're all going to die,
right?
We're all going to die. It's appointed for us to die. That's what we all know to be true. I don't know anyone who has made it past 150.
Right.
You know, I've never seen it or heard of it. And more importantly, everyone has to deal with death. And so God does something for us in our weakness, in our frailty, in our humanity. He does something for us, and it's a word called forgiveness. And which is like a game changer. You go to the heroin addict rehab places, if they are really teaching people to forgive, 80% of them make it. It's like the key to life. And what God does is he gives us forgiveness, and he mercifully changes us. So it's not a religion that starts down and goes up. It's a gift that comes down from above and changes our lives in every way. It changes for here and now and then for eternity. And that's the great news. I mean, our bodies are going to not make it someday, you know. We have to deal with, like, what is life like on the other side? What is there? Are we just going back and is that it? And God shows us a relationship that lasts for an eternity. I had a 21-year-old son who got cancer, and 2 years later he died. And we're going on the 9th anniversary here in a few days. And I mean, he was the greatest kid. He just was successful at everything he put his hand to. He was financially savvy. He was making it. He was married, all that. And then he goes.
Sorry.
Yeah. But the reality for him is he had a walk with God that was so real that he kept saying, don't worry, I'm going to live and not die. And he did die physically, but he's alive with God. Right. And you know, because the scripture does say that when we encounter death, we are face to face with Christ. And that's when the judgment comes. Did we live for the Lord? Did we belong to God? And that's the thing, man. It's like, you know, guys like you grew up a certain way and you have expectations on your lives and all that. But the reality is that, man, did you really know him? I mean, if it's a religion, I'd never signed up for religion, and I'm not religious. And the more moral people are, usually the less open and receptive they are.
That is exactly
And at some point, they have to reach their either their bottom, or they get intellectually savvy, where they realize,
or those like me who think you're moral and think that you have it going on, but you really don't. You're really broken inside.
Exactly.
You know, I think I have a good moral standing, and I don't know if it comes from religion. I just think I'm a good person.
I don't know. How good are you? How good are you? Let's compare you to Mother Teresa, or do you measure? You know, you see what I'm saying? It's
depends,
like,
you know,
so I believe that you're a good guy, and I can say that in all reality, but also believe that all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And I know that you would admit that. Of course not. I know you would admit that. I know that, you know, because there's humility in your life. And so the question is, do you know God, or do you have a desire to know God? And that begs the question of, is there a God? And I think that's a pretty strong case for that there is a God. I mean, we're
well, even when you say that, I mean, I'm jumping around, but our Olympic team, I mean, we had 8 guys on it, and everyone was a different religion: Muslim, Jewish, Catholic, Mormon. Me, I wasn't sure what the hell was going on, you know.
Right.
I mean, and
that would have been me when I was 17.
We'd be on planes, and I'd just ask everyone, you know, explain to me.
Right.
Explain to me.
Oh,
and
man.
They're all so different, but they're all the same kind of, you know.
Well,
and then somebody didn't like somebody. I'm like, how does this work that you don't, you know, like, so it's funny. I got to learn a lot about the different religions, they all,
Sure.
but they're all very similar. I mean,
There's a lot of similarity on this
they're
side,
all
but
still
here's
good
where
people.
here's the simple differentiation, and that is and it's pretty simple, is that Christ came down from above, and he didn't ask us to climb up this ladder of moral reality. Certainly, he gave us principles to live by, like the Sermon on the Mount. When he gives the principles, he said, with adultery, he said, it's been said to you by the other rabbis, don't commit adultery. But I say to you that even if you have lust in your heart, now which man do you know has not had lust in his heart?
Yeah,
right.
So he says, even if you have that, you've committed adultery. So Jesus is like turning it around from moral success to like in your heart being transformed, because I know that I can't live without God in me. I can't live without the Holy Spirit in me. And the difference between the other religions is they're all starting from the bottom, trying to climb up the ladder. And how high can you go? Can you get up there with God? No, nobody can do it. Nobody can cross into it to his holiness and his majesty and his awesomeness. He created this world, and you could look at a DNA strand. You can say, how did this happen? There's information in there. Even my 9-year-old daughter was walking to school the other day. We're holding hands walking to school, and we're talking about God the Creator. She said nothing. She said something cannot come out of nothing. So there has to be someone.
Right.
So it's a simple deduction here. It's just reasoning and we can use our minds. I mean, God doesn't say have a lobotomy and figure it out by faith. No, he says, let me give you some substantial evidence here. And we were just in Israel. I was just in Israel recently. We went to the Qumran caves, where they discovered many scriptures in these caves, including the entire book of Isaiah, which proves to us that thousands of years ago, this has not been tampered with. The Bible has been passed down, and it is, what it was back then, it is today. It's not like some people came and said, oh, we should design it to make it more like ethnic friendly or family friendly or this or that or the other. I mean, it's like it is what it says. I mean, the women got to the tomb where Jesus rose from the dead. It says that they outran the disciples. I mean, that's an embarrassing thing for a man 2,000 years ago to say a woman outran me to the tomb, but that's exactly what happened, and that's what it says. So we could talk about this, and we'll continue to have these dialogues. And man, Joe, incredible story you have, man. It's been a joy to talk to you about all of this and your life. And please tell your family we really appreciate your time here. And Mike, tell us real quickly, or both of you guys real quickly, about Battleground and what is your business? What does your future look like?
Well, it's the one great thing about Battleground. Joe brought this idea to me several years ago, and we kind of hashed it around, and really through some real perseverance, we had people brought to us. You say divine appointments, divine connections.
He keeps saying this every day.
We have had people
awesome.
brought into our life and our company that are now family, and built probably the strongest team in every aspect of our business for a new startup, if you will. And it is all about the people. I think everything you do is about the people, and we're so fortunate because we get to work with our best friends and to really build a great enterprise in something we love doing, in the combat sports arena, the media world, and now we're transitioning over to interactive social media and kind of walking the tech line.
Mike, is there a website people could go to find out?
www.fightbattleground.com.
Fightbattleground.com. Well, that's great. You guys are absolutely incredible. Really appreciate this time to interview. Mike, your story is in the book, Miracles in Manhattan. People can go on Amazon and find that book, find your story, find 50 incredible, miraculous stories. Everyone who contributed to that book, they said, no doubt they had a miracle happen to them that could never have happened on their own.
And I just want to say that, someone told me this a long time ago, and I had no idea what it means, but never quit until the miracle happens. You need to keep coming, and in our world, you need to keep grinding, because a miracle will happen for you. But if you stop, you'll never get there. And
That's really good.
Keep going. And when you're really struggling, grab onto somebody who's taking you along the journey, and just grab onto them and hold on to them.
It's great, Mike.
And
well,
they'll drag you across the finish
our
line.
Savior Jesus said, ask, seek, and knock. And those are Greek words of continual action. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking, and the door will be open to you. And I would say that to everyone who's watching today, that Jesus is real. He's coming again. He came the first time. He lived the life that we could not live. He died the death that we should have died in our place. And when he died on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So we receive that forgiveness today. And if you're watching today and you want to receive forgiveness and receive Christ, it's a simple prayer. It just goes like this, that Jesus, we believe that you lived this life. We couldn't live it, but you did it for us. You died on the cross. You forgave us of our sins. And Lord, 3 days later, you rose from the dead to eyewitnesses, and the hundreds of eyewitnesses saw that you rose, and many people just changed their whole lives to come follow you. And today, we pray that this would be a reality in you, that resurrection power would come into your life, and you can overcome, and you can be more than a conqueror through Jesus Christ. So we say amen and amen to that. It's been a great time together with you guys. This is awesome. And remember, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but we overcome through the Lord's grace and his power in our lives. So God bless you guys, and God bless all of you who are viewing today.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. It's
Means a lot. Thank you.